Hello, my name is Veen Sacrosanct and I'm back with another video. Today I want to talk to you about one of the many cool features of the Roland R8 drum machine, which is the capability of using the scope edit function to trigger external gear and how to program multiple sequences into just one pattern. In my last video, I explained how to use the scope edit function of the Roland R8 to program additional mini steps in a sequence or pattern. If you already watched this video, then today it will be very interesting as we are going to dig a bit deeper into the menu of the Roland. If you did not watch this video, I suggest you do, because over there I explain a lot about this cool function and you will be able to follow me when I talk about the scope edit function. Now, as you may have noticed in the intro of this video, I'm using a bass synth and some delay. The bass synth is being sequenced by the Roland R8, but the thing is, when I press the play button on the Roland, you only hear the bass and not the drum sounds. Even with the volume slider turned all the way up. For the purpose of this video, I already pre-programmed some patterns into the R8. And on pattern number 36, we have the simple bass sequence, which you just heard. And on pattern number 39, I added some drum sounds on top of the bass sound. The question is how I managed to play a bass sequence without any drum sounds and how I added drum sounds on top of the sequence in another pattern. The answer is once again the scope edit function of the Roland R8. In my previous video about the scope edit function, I talked about the ability of changing the velocity or the pitch of a drum sound on every single step or mini step once you are in the menu of the scope function. And as you can see here, I have added some kick drums to my sequence, but you cannot hear them. The reason why is because I turned the velocity completely down on all the steps I programmed in the sequence, and that is why you cannot hear the kick drum. Once you have programmed a sequence or a pattern and you go back into step mode, you then can select the scope function by pressing the cursor page and right after that the scope button. By navigating to every single step in the sequence, by pressing the left or right arrows next to the cursor page button, you are then able to change the velocity of these individual steps by pressing the parameter select button, which is in between the off and on buttons. When you press this button a few times, you will notice the menu is changing. Once you reach the correct parameter, which in this case is a $sign followed by capital V and L, you are able to change the velocity of that particular sound. Turn it all the way down using the value slider and the sound of the kick drum is gone, but your bass sound remains. I will give a short demonstration. So, if you want to program a sequence for an external bass synth or whatsoever, you are able to mute all the drum sounds by using the scope edit function of the Roland R8 and change the velocity. Now, on another pattern, I used the same sequence, but I added some drum sounds. How did I do this? Because now you can clearly hear a kick and a snare. Well, it all has to do with selecting another sound bank on the R8 and use this bank to program a second sequence on top of the bass sequence. As I explained before, I used some sounds on the Roland R8 to program my bass sequence, which I then muted by turning the velocity of these sounds completely down. This sequence was programmed using sounds coming from the second bank of the Roland. On pattern number 39, I then added another sequence on top of the bass sequence, but only this time I use sounds coming from the first sound bank. So if you want to program a drum sequence which differs from the bass sequence, you have to use another sound bank, and in this case I used sound bank A. You can change sound banks by pressing the pad bank button, and you will notice the sounds on the pads are different when you do this. Every time you press pad bank, the information in the menu changes from A to E. You get the idea. Once you have selected another sound bank which contain sounds that you like for your drum sequence, you then can start adding these steps on top of the bass sequence, and once you are finished, you then can play the bass sequence together with the drum sounds. One thing I need to point out, and which is a bit of a downside of the Roland R8, is that you only can change the velocity of a sound to 1. So if you play the sequence and turn the volume of your bass synth or whatsoever completely down, you will still hear the drum sounds from the bank that you use to program your bass sequence, although in the distance. I do not know if you can hear it in the video, but the drum sounds from the second bank, they are there. But once you turn the volume of your bass synth up, they will go unnoticed. So this concludes today's video on how to use the scope edit function of the Roland R8 to program a sequence for an external synthesizer without hearing any of the drum sounds. And I also explained on how to add the drum sounds from another sound bank and place them on top of the bass sequence. I hope this video was helpful in some way and that it contributes on your own productions. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. This way it will motivate me on releasing more content about the Roland R8 and some other stuff in my studio. In the meantime, keep on grinding, keep making music and do what you love to do. My name is Veen Sacrosanct and see you next time.